What's up, everybody? Welcome back to ALLSMITH. Today's guest is an entrepreneur, and he's the founder of Livv a Great Story, which is a brand for the modern adventurer and the hero's journey. Today, I'm excited to welcome Zach Horvath. Welcome to the show, man.
Man, stoked to be here. Thank you.
I love seeing the head bob when we discuss what Livv a Great Story is, because before I ever met you, we talked about it briefly a couple of weeks ago. I was rocking that Livv a Great Story shirt down in Mexico, and it very much was relatable to me. Little did I know that almost 8 years later, we'd be chopping it up and become pretty cool friends.
Man, when we talked about that was so cool because I just found a photo that I have of like a screenshot of the website with that gray shirt that you have, and then the green and red and blue and I think another color, but it was like those were the first shirts, like the first big run of shirts besides the first 24. And so when you said that, I was like, man, that's OG, like that's the beginning. So yeah, man, it's super cool to be here and excited to talk about it all, and especially right here, right now, like to be able to kind of drop a pin on this 10-year anniversary of Livv a Great Story and like really dive into it. So you're gonna get all the real stuff.
Yeah, that's what I'm excited for, man. The real stuff is what we're here for. And adventure is just such a rad word. When you think about, you can have a business adventure, you can have relationship adventures, you can have lifestyle adventures, you can have, as you described briefly on our connection previously, adventures overseas in Europe. And, you and I have a connection on that a little bit. But I grew up, man, like where my family took camping trips, and we would go into the high Sierras close to Mammoth. And that was one big adventure, man. It was navigating where there weren't a lot of people. You had to use a tangible paper map. Like you couldn't use Google Maps because there was no service. And something about that always unlocked this euphoric biological connection to the world and to what's possible. And as I say some of these things, what comes to mind for you? Because Livv a Great Story is so broad and inclusive that it's quite frankly fucking perfect, because it just relates to anybody and everybody wherever they are on the journey. And so how did the concept kind of come to be, and how was it born?
So really, like the super long story short and kind of the origin story that I tell now is I bought a one-way ticket. So I kind of like dropped out of college, didn't really go to college, but dropped out, and then was trying to figure out my life in my early 20s. I ended up buying a one-way ticket to Europe and traveling for 7 months. And that was like a super pivotal experience. And through that of like staying at hostels and couch surfing and hitchhiking and just really kind of like vagabonding around with no plan and no agenda, just to like experience life as much as possible. Through that experience of like connecting with people from around all those places and also other travelers, I realized that all of us, no matter where we come from, what we look like, what language we speak, kind of all the things that make us different, we're all on our own adventure and we're all living our own story. And it's really up to us to step into that and like take ownership and maybe authorship of our own experience. And so when I finished that trip, I was just like writing and journaling and taking a bunch of photos. I've always been kind of a creative entrepreneur type person. And so during that trip, at one point I wrote this phrase, Livv a Great Story, in one of my journals. And so I came back to Austin. I was really like stoked on obviously coming back from that experience and like wanting to leverage all of that and move into the next chapter of my journey. Wasn't really sure what that looked like, but kind of as like an inspiration to myself, I spray painted this Livv a Great Story on a wall here in Austin, Texas. And people just started taking photos of it and sharing it on social media, and started spreading and spreading. I made some buttons, I made some stickers, I made some shirts, and those started spreading. And that was 10 years ago on July 12th now, that first Instagram post for Livv a Great Story, those first 100 buttons was shared. And so over the last decade, it's been like a journey of taking this idea that I spray painted on a wall that was inspired by traveling and connecting with people and everybody living their own story, and now growing it into what it's become. So that's kind of the
That's rad,
origin
man.
story, but like unpacking that, like that's kind of the now bio for Live a Great Story. But man, it's been so much more than that.
Well, what comes to mind is it was a moment when you seeming were a little bit lost. You weren't necessarily following the traditional American dream of finish high school, get the best grades, go to college. Based on your grades in college, you can then get assigned to a grad school or figure out a 9 to 5 job, which then can fund entrepreneurship. It was almost like you made the decision that lifestyle is not really for me. I'm going to wonder and wander, which I think that's like a fun play on words, right? Because they both synergize into the development of a beautiful life. So many people just get brainwashed into do it this way, follow these steps, and then you'll get the thing. And then they get the thing and they're not really fulfilled. But it's kind of the land of comfortable complacency where it's like, this is what I've worked for my whole life. It pays the bills. I'm just trying to make it to my pillow at night. And then as a byproduct, I'm living a story, but it's missing a key word there. It's not a great story. It's the story that they were handed based on, yes, they worked hard. Yes, they followed the rhyme and the rhythm of, the Matrix and the rat race. But it's not really the thing that lights their heart on fire. And I think it takes a brave, courageous, entrepreneurial mind to kind of push back against that a little bit. And then as you wonder and you wander, you start to explore things and your lenses shift a little bit because you're not necessarily trying to get something. You're curiously exploring. And I think with the childlike mindset and the curious eye, you now see things a little bit more artistically and maybe with a little bit more innovation, as opposed to what can I get from that? You're thinking, how can we embark on an experience? When I say some of these things, were these some of the subconscious ideologies that traveled through your headspace as you were navigating Europe at a pretty pivotal moment? Because at that time, you didn't know that it was going to unlock this reservoir of potential for like a future business development. At that time, you're like, I don't know anything about anything. I'm full of piss and vinegar. Let's go do the thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of levels to it. Um, there's there's this I think the first the first step of the hero's journey is the call to adventure. Okay. And that call to adventure can look like a lot of different things for a lot of different people. For me, it was this one-way ticket, entrepreneurship, travel, relationships, health and wellness, like all these and we had this opportunity no matter kind of at any stage of your life to you had the call to adventure, and then as the hero, you can step into it or not, right? And I think even if you and so really like in kind of reflecting about all of this, like, I accepted this call to adventure to go on that trip and have since, like use this methodology to kind of embark on a lot of other areas too. So I think that looking back on that, I didn't know what it was going to be. Like I had no idea what was going to happen. I had no idea like what the future was. I was just like, man, I need to do this. Like it feels in my heart that I need to go on this trip. And so that call to adventure led me to kind of the next step and the next step and the next step. And I think, now that I've been through a little bit of life, I can look back on these experiences and see how the dots connect in hindsight, from a
Yeah.
business and a personal standpoint. Um,
It's always a
so
mystery looking forward, but it's science looking back, right? It's always easy to
definitely.
connect the dots looking backwards. When you had this original call to adventure, where did you fly to first?
I flew to, I started my trip in Madrid. So I flew to Spain, and I, that was en route to go to, okay, so I started the trip in Spain. Okay. And my plan was to go up to the running of the bulls in Pamplona. So I left Austin, Texas on July 4th, which was like an Independence Day of sorts, which is like an important day to me, which is coming up again, which is kind of cool. So I left, arrive in Madrid, like a brand new traveler, no idea what's happening. I'm just going to go to Pamplona. And I get down to like the bus stop or train stop, and I'm like, hey, I want to book a ticket to Pamplona. And the girl like literally laughs at me. She's like, they're sold out for 4 days. Like, you're trying to go to one of the most popular festivals in the world. Like, this has been sold out forever. And yeah, good luck getting there. And some Australians grabbed me and they're like, hey, we're going to rent a car. Do you want to get in the car? And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And like
Wow.
that was like the start of it. Like, we're all like looking around. The four of us get a car. They're like, can you drive a stick shift, like a manual? And I'm like, no, I can't. And they're like, well, I can't either. And I can't either. And the guy's like, well, I can, but I'm from Australia. So I've never driven on the right side of the road. So all of his stick driving is from the, like, the other side. And I'm like, let's go. So we get in this car, literally like leave the rental shop, pull into a gas station, buy a case of beers, get back on the road, crack open the beers. And then we're headed to Pamplona. And it was like the most like the biggest start to that trip. Like, it couldn't have, like, meeting strangers, getting in a car, like couldn't understand this dude because he was from like random Australia. Like, he was like a hillbilly, like bogan from there. I'm like, I can't understand you, but you're hilarious. And that was how the trip started, on like really like set the standard for the trip.
Well, move fast and break shit. LSKD develops functional sportswear with a streetwear aesthetic that's on a mission to inspire you to chase the vibe through sport, fitness, and adventure. I train daily in the rep shorts and love the versatility they offer. The zipper pocket is an absolute game changer. I go from training at the gym directly to meetings, running errands, or prepping for podcasts. The LSKD tribe has become true family, and we are excited to continue to develop our community. Shop now at lskd.com and use code ALLSMITH. We chase the vibe here at ALLSMITH. Let's all become 1% better every day. What comes to mind here, Zach, is say yes and figure it out later. Because just imagine, like, you say no to that, potentially the trajectory of the rest of your life changes. It's like weird to think about it. It seems like such a seemingly small, mundane moment, but your willingness to be like, no. This was my original thought process. I need to go to this place. Yes, I'm traveling thin. I don't really know what I'm getting myself into, but I also don't know when I'm going to be able to come back. So I'm going to figure out a way to go over, under, or around to get to that destination. And then when I get there, I'll figure out the rest. And I think that is a part of the hero's journey, is the cognitive confidence, knowing that whatever comes next, I'm going to figure it out.
Entrepreneurship and travel both are amazing ways to practice that, because that's a skill of like, I don't know, this road is very unclear. There's no path here. I'm not following a map, but let's just start chopping down like trees and like, let's go.
Give me the machete.
Does that, and travel, right? Because it's like you like, and what happens through both of these is you practice that skill like over and over and over and over again. You're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do this. I'm gonna figure it out, right? Like, I don't know how to do marketing or product development or building a team or any of the things, branding, like name anything. As an entrepreneur, you got to start it off, right? And then same with travel. You're like real travel. There's like American travel where you like have an itinerary and you do all, like, that doesn't really count because then you're just like following the plan. But when you like actually set out and you're like, cool, I'm gonna like show up to a country, I don't know anybody, I don't know where I'm staying, I don't know what I'm doing, then you really get to practice that skill. And I think that's one of the reasons that I really like suggest young people to travel, is because you have to learn that skill early. Because like you're talking earlier about the like traditional route of stuff. It's like you go to school, they tell you do this, they tell you do this, they tell you to do this, follow this path. This is your, go to this class. Like, you're just following the rules for like the first 18 years of your life. And then maybe it's 22 years. And then maybe it's 26. And maybe you just fall into this like pattern of, following the rules. But like when you get out there and you're like, cool, jumping off, like there's no rules out here, that opens up all of this opportunity. and then you can take that experience and like apply it to the next thing. And that's why I'm like, yo, you're 22 years old, like book the trip, get out of here.
Mm-hmm.
Like your parents want you to get a job, like go flip burgers, save up a couple grand and like book a trip. It'll change your life. And, you're going to learn way more out there doing that. And those are like real world skills that you can apply then to like a job or a career or whatever later.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
What's coming to mind for me here is, Tony Robbins has that famous quote, if you exchange expectation for appreciation, your world changes forever. That's cool. It sounds great. It's cliche. It kind of fits the job sometimes. But I also think that there needs to be this this willingness to not compromise, in a sense of like, no, I'm going to the running of the bulls. Whether I need to drive there in a stick shift with a random hillbilly Australian who doesn't really speak great English, and we're going to crack some beers and build some memories, we're going to figure out how to get there. If I need to couch surf, if I need to sleep on my bag on the side of the road, I don't care. I'm going to find a way to do the thing. And I think when you have that goal in mind, it just becomes whatever it takes, right? And then as a byproduct, you develop and you truly live great stories because you're willing to embark on the in-between of what doesn't necessarily fall in alignment with the plan. And that's the thing that I think is so cool. So as you guys are driving there, what is that kind of process like when you get there? What kind of happens next?
I split ways with them pretty quickly because I was meeting. It was kind of a crazy situation because like I grew up in Hungary. So my dad's from Eastern Europe, Hungary, the country. And so I lived there from when I was 5 to 9 years old, and I played soccer and kept in touch with all of my friends and stuff from there. And then one of the guys I grew up with playing soccer ended up being like 6'7" and a basketball player. And then he played basketball with a TCU, Texas Christian basketball player. And then they came over years later and visited. So my friend who I was like this tall with came back to the US this tall. And turns out he was playing basketball at the time in Pamplona with the Pamplona local basketball team. So I split ways with my Aussie friends, met up with my Hungarian friend and all of his local friends. So I stayed at a local's house. I hung out with the locals. I did all of the local things for the next couple of days at the festival with all these like Spanish, Pamplona locals and kind of got the inside scoop. So yeah, that festival was amazing. I regretfully did not run with the bulls because surprisingly, the Pamplona locals don't do it. They were like very adamant, like, do not do this. It's all
it's a big touristy thing, huh?
Yeah, like very few of those basketball players had played or had ran, which is kind of a crazy thing. And it's
interesting.
Honestly one of my biggest regrets, pretty much period. I was like, I'll come back and do this again. And like, now like 10 years later, I haven't done it. Yeah, I spent a couple of days with them. And then, yeah, that was like the start of the trip. And I hadn't have any of the trip planned. So that was like going to Pamplona was it. After that, I was like, we'll see what happens. And that took me down through southern Spain, hopped over to Morocco, Italy, kind of around. And like, that just did this whole thing that I just ended up wandering for like spot to spot and just kind of like, yeah, following the road as it unfolded.
That's rad, man. It goes to show too that like the only thing that's permanent in this life is impermanence. And those who you start your journey with are not necessarily the people you end the journey with. And so recognizing that there's moments in time where we need to practice the art of eternal presence and being very connected with the people that are with you in that moment, very much realizing that they're not going to be with you forever. And you're probably going to move on. And then in the pursuit, you're going to meet new people. And then you may reconnect with old people. And it's just this constant one foot in front of the other, allowing yourself to have the experience rather than trying to match the expectation, to kind of come full circle of what I was alluding to previously. To give people a better metaphoric imagery, what's your attire? Like, what are you expecting as far as weather? Are you just wearing like a big backpack, What does food and hydration look like for you? Are you staying in hostels? Like, how do we create a little bit of imagery for our listeners today?
Yeah, good question. So I took this trip back in 2012, and then also last year in 2023, so almost a decade after this initial trip, I took another trip, the exact same trip. So that trip a decade ago lasted 7 months, and then last year I traveled for 9 months doing basically the exact same thing. And both times it's a carry-on bag, so you have essentially one bag that's around 40 or 50 liters, which is a pretty small bag. I had, let's say 4 pairs of shorts, 5 pairs of shirts, in compression bags, a computer. Last year I had a drone, which is half the bag. I had a film camera, a little digital camera, a microphone. I was like interviewing people on this trip. But yeah, like sandals, running shoes, which are basically everything. You're carrying very little stuff, and it's amazing that you can survive and really thrive with literally everything you have on your back. And you come back like, why do we have all this shit? Like, because you're like, I can literally live anywhere and have the most amazing experiences with nothing. And turns out you can also buy anything you need anywhere in the world. Like, you need pants, you buy pants. You need shoes, you buy shoes. You're like, a lot of people, like, if you're thinking about going to travel, like whatever you're thinking about, and like long-term travel for a month or 2 months or something or more, like whatever you're going to take, just take half of it and buy it all along the way. Because like, I got rid of everything, came back. Most of the stuff I wear is from that I picked up while traveling. And so you don't really need a lot of stuff, and all that stuff weighs you down, which is definitely like a metaphor for life in general.
Yeah. I think minimalism is such a special thing. I got into that a little bit. I forgot the two gentlemen's names, but
The
they have that.
minimalists.
Yeah, the minimalists, but they have a great blog that I started reading back in the day around the time when I found Live a Great Story. They've got
Josh and Ryan, bro. That's who they are. And I met Josh Milburn. I met him in 2009 or 2010 in person. He had just started that blog you're talking about. And I read his blog that was like, I quit my 6-figure job and got rid of all my shit. And I read it. And this is right after I had dropped out of college, and I threw away everything I owned. I threw away everything. I had I think it was like 42 things in my apartment. And that was like a super pivotal moment in my life, because that was like, get rid of your stuff, collect experiences. It's not material. Chase your vision of stuff. Don't make it stuff. And meeting him in person, and being, that moment, because then that like freed me out of a lot of baggage emotionally, physically. And then I've basically been a minimalist ever since. So like half the stuff I own is just like Live a Great Story boxes, or more than half.
Yeah. No, that's super cool, man. Yeah. I think minimalism is a great concept, and it's very difficult because we place attachment to things where it's not actually the item. It's the memory associated with the item. And I think when we cross paths with loss, we start to attach ourselves to those things. Little do we know that the majority of our attachment to that actually is just right here. It's the story that we have in relation to that. And that t-shirt or that item really doesn't have a ton of value. It's the smell associated with it because you did the thing with the person at that time. And it has a deep connection to our ethos, our core, and our soul. And I think that's rad that you cross paths with those guys, because you guys are definitely in the same frequency, I would say, which is super cool. So you're traveling around. What was it like to navigate the language barrier and the currency challenges? Obviously, probably utilizing a credit card that can kind of do a natural currency mathematical thing on the back end in relation to your banking and whatnot. But what was it like with the language barrier, and how were you able to navigate that? The Trident family taught me something really important this last year. that we are all a bundle of stories, both good, bad, and everything in between. All of their cold brews remind their customers that they are part of something bigger than themselves. I start my day with the Sweet Cream Cold Brew as I am prepping my mind and body for fitness, service, coaching, and podcasting. With various locations in San Diego, they offer over 14 nitro cold brews and a variety of specialty drinks. You can find the perfect brew and pair it with one of their treats from the Keto Bakery. You can check them out over at tridentcoffee.com and use code ALLSMITH to take your coffee experience to the next level.
So there's I can go two ways. I can go 2012 or I can go 23, right? So
let's go early on. I want to hear the founding component when you were just like raw and green trying to figure out who Zach Horvath is.
Yeah, back then there was no credit cards and no Wi-Fi. Like no one accepted credit cards. 2012, no one accepted credit cards. So you're pulling out ATM money and getting charged every time for that. And there was no global SIM cards. People didn't have Wi-Fi like they have now. So it was probably the only time. Oh man, this is cool. This is my FedEx guy. He just knocked, and my FedEx guy is a baller traveler, and he loves Live a Great Story, and we always talk about stuff. And he's like, "Hey, I'm going to come back tomorrow and talk to you about waterproof socks." And so unfortunately, I'm not going to pick this up because, whatever. But this is the final order of all the gear that's coming out on July 12th for the anniversary.
That's awesome, man. I'm pumped for the new gear, and I've heard you discuss it a little bit, which we'll dive into a little bit later. But 10-year anniversary, you're coming out with new merch. It's a very adventure related, and you're upscaling a little bit the quality of product. You're making sure that the materials are durable, pack friendly, can withstand some of the elements, dry fast. And I'm excited to hear more about that.
Yeah, sorry, I got derailed by the knocking.
That's part of the human experience, right? Is like the compartmentalizing and the switching of gears and the adaptability. Like the only thing that goes according to plan is the plan not going according to the plan. But yeah, what was the currency like? As you mentioned, you're having to pull out money out of the ATM. What's the communication barrier like for you?
Back then, especially in Spain, Italy, France, people didn't really speak English, and a lot of those countries still don't speak as good English. So communication was a lot harder back then. That was around that time I took the trip, was like right pre-Instagram, Skype. There was no WhatsApp. It was all Skype. Facebook was the main thing. And that was really pre-Google Maps type stuff. Like that was about the last time that you could travel Europe, I would say, disconnected. Because now everybody goes to Europe and they're on their, roaming charges, and have Wi-Fi everywhere. But yeah, back then it was like kind of the last frontier of like pre-technology travel, which was I'm really excited and grateful that I was able to do that, because, I was, trying to communicate with people like without words, right? Without technology. And so it was, there was definitely some hard parts there. The money thing was funny because I didn't take a debit card. Like I somehow forgot to leave with my debit card, thinking I could just use my credit card. And I took, X amount of US dollars, and I got to Pamplona and was like, oh my God, like I don't have any money. And I was able to Western Union some money from somehow, but like, because I was staying there long enough. So I got Western Union money that was like, I think it was $700. And but I needed this debit card, obviously, to like take out cash because there was no credit cards. And so I was like, well, how am I going to do this? About a month later, so that was July, like let's say in August or something, my sister was coming to go to school in Germany. And so she was going to meet me in Barcelona and bring me a debit card to be able to like use and take out money. Right. But that $700 had to last me for like a month or so. And I ended up, I made my way down, you know, hostels, couch surfing, doing all the stuff through Spain, Sevilla, Granada, you know, Madrid, down. And then I crossed over into Morocco, and I was in Morocco for about 10 days, but like my money was running out in Morocco. So I ended up buying a flight from um, Marrakesh to Barcelona to meet my sister. But like my money was running out, and like I literally didn't have money. There was no Venmo, there's no like Zelle. Like you couldn't, it's not like I had access to money. And I remember having to like go to my hostel and be like, hey, I don't have money. Like, do you have a cheaper room or something? And I don't remember the exact conversation. I'm like, yeah, you can sleep on the roof, which they just had like pillows and like, and it was August in like Morocco, which is like August in Texas. You know, it's like 100 degrees plus, or probably more. And so I would wake up every morning at like 6 a.m. just like sweating like crazy because it's like already, you know, 95 on the roof of the building. And, you know, that I was just like skimming by. Like I didn't have any money to do anything, and no access to money. So I didn't get to go to the Sahara and do like a camel experience, which was a bummer. I had to like, I didn't get to go to the coast of Morocco. There's a really cool beach, Essaouira in Morocco. And I was kind of like handcuffed, just like hanging out in Marrakesh, like stretching my money as long as possible. And then
Little did you
eventually,
know that that was teaching you budgeting. It was teaching you the management of uncertainty to run a business later. It was teaching you the level of uncertainty that comes with being a business owner, and also teaching you that it takes a village. It takes a tribe. You need to ask for help. And being able to learn all those tangible skills organically without it seemingly being in a classroom where it doesn't have as much meaning because it's not an experience. You're living the experience where it's like, if I run out of money, I am fucked. That's freaking awesome, man, that like you got to embark on all these things. And so when you were able to get to Barcelona, what was that like when you got to connect with your sister? Was she like, you're an idiot?
for sure. And not the only time she's ever said that. There's been a lot of those moments. Man, I took a midnight flight from Marrakesh to Barcelona. I got to Barcelona like 4 a.m. The hostel wouldn't let me check in. There was like a day buffer where I got there a day early. She got there a day late. So I left at like midnight, got to Barcelona, could go to check in my hostel. They're like, no, you can't check in. So I'm like, well, what do I do? I'm exhausted. Can't, you know, walking down like groggy as hell, walking down the streets of Barcelona. And I turn this corner and there's like 200 ripped, tall, beautiful guys smelling like insane cologne, just like all these, and they're waiting in line to go into the club at 6 a.m. at sunrise, yeah, waiting to go party. And they're just like all these like just 200 gay dudes waiting to go into a gay bar. I'm just like, oh my God. And I'm just like walking through them, you know, they're all like just jacked animals, and I'm just like walking through like, I can't believe this is happening. I find a bench. I just lay down on the bench, grab my bag, and just like go to sleep on this bench to kill like 5 hours in the morning to be able to check in the hostel.
That's wild, man. To give people context, what's the difference between a hostel and like a hotel, aside from like amenities, and like how do you differentiate between the two?
Yeah. A hotel is a spot that you basically don't ever want to stay at while you're traveling. Just first things first, if you're under 30 years old, don't stay in a hotel maybe like 1 or 2 days out of the month, just like period. Because the difference is a hostel is like a shared community, living space bunk situation where you have a budget travel setup that allows you to sleep that like allows you to split the space with people so that you're sleeping in a 6-bed dorm or an 8-bed or a 10-bed dorm that are like bunk beds, and you're staying. But the reason that's important is because you're staying with fellow travelers, and you're in the mix with other people who are doing the exact same thing that you're doing, and you're interacting with people from all over the world, and you know, can stay a lot cheaper. You can stretch your money. You have, you know, a locker, let's say, to put your stuff, travel with a lock. You have people that are looking for adventures, that are going to do stuff, versus a hotel where you're in a room by yourself. Hotel people don't want to make friends with you. They're there to do their own thing. They're traveling with their girlfriend or whatever. They're not social. And if you go to a hotel, you're not going to meet anybody. It's a lot harder. It's way more expensive, like 10 times more expensive, 5 to 10 times more expensive, versus a hostel where you just like show up. Hey, what's up? Where are you from? And then you're just like into the mix with people who are doing the exact same thing you're doing. So
Yeah. I think the hostel situation is really cool because it is that. It's community oriented. You might, you know, chop it up with somebody, and that might diverge your plan a little bit. You might find yourself on their path for a little bit, or they might know something that you don't know. And there's this ping ponging back and forth of travel ideology and experiences and relatability and disagreement. And there's also, at least in my experiences staying in a hostel a few times, there's an element of fear that you're going to come back if you happen to leave the hostel without your bag. You're going to come back and it's just going to be gone. The ones that I've stayed at didn't have the locker situation. And so it was a very interesting relationship of like, well, I might come back and this just may not be here. And that's something I have to accept.
I've stayed at maybe 100 hostels like in my life. And I have only one time had a bad experience with a bad person.
Mm.
Yes, there's always the possibility that something bad could happen, but the likelihood, because you're with people who are like you, right? And like, they don't want to get robbed. They don't want to get their stuff stolen. Yes, don't be dumb, and don't like, I have this rule. It's called zip it up, right? So it's like one of the top 5 travel rules, zip it up, right? Like, don't leave your bag undone. At the hostel, just zip it up, right? Make sure when you get up that you zip your bag, zip your pockets. The application is very broad for this rule, but I'm constantly thinking about it even back here, because yes, it's a lot easier to like, you leave your bag there. For someone to unzip your bag and go through your bag is a big thing, right? But if it's just open and someone's like peeking through, like, of course they can steal something. But I mean, hostels are like once again, if you're a young person going out to travel, like, hostels changed my life. Live a Great Story wouldn't exist without hostels, like, period.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also really love that concept, zip it up. What I'm hearing is dot your I's, cross your T's. Don't leave crumbs, to echo Matthew McConaughey. Don't do things you got to look over your shoulder about, because then looking forward, you have less green lights. You've got yellows and reds. And yes, you learn things through the yellows and reds, and those things give you great stories, but they can also be massive hiccups that can, quite frankly, be a little bit unnecessary. And so the famous line also that comes from the military personnel that I've communicated with there is take care of your gear and your gear takes care of you. And so that concept of zip it up, I think, is a great tangible takeaway for people. As you are navigating your European experience, you're making these relationships. Was there a particular like highlight moment for you of like a person that you met, or a meal that you shared with somebody, or grabbing drinks in a particular moment that stood out to you, that like, now reflecting back of over a decade of time passing, you mentioned that was in 2012. Are there like one or two specific moments that you're like, whoa, that experience freaking changed my life?
One of the most impactful experiences was meeting a guy my age who had escaped from North Korea. We were in Estonia and at a hostel. Yeah, we were in Estonia at a hostel, and um, talking to him for about 2 hours was one of the craziest things, because obviously North Korea is one of the wildest places on the planet. You hear all sorts of stories about it, and no one escapes. And if they do escape, the likelihood that they survive the escape is very low. So talking with this guy who had escaped with his mom and was now like traveling around was a really crazy experience, because that was a moment where really one of the themes of Live a Great Story was cemented about, even though we come from different places, different backgrounds, different language, different culture, different religion, different skin tone, different, we're still just human, right? And this guy who was from one of the craziest places on the globe, he and I are just chopping it up at a hostel, like talking about life. And like, you know, a lot of the themes that he was going through that I was going through were very similar. And so that was like a very wild experience that was for sure, I think back a lot on. Um, Another one really cool one was in Estonia at the same time. I met a girl, and she invited me to go hang out with her like university students. And we walk into this dorm party. Essentially, there's like 15 people in this dorm, and she's like, "Hey, everybody, this is my friend Zack from America." And everybody went from speaking Estonian like immediately to speaking English, the entire room,
Whoa.
for the rest of the night. It was like they were like, oh, because they all speak really good English in Estonia. They immediately switched and were like, so even the tangential conversations happening, like we're talking like this, everybody else is speaking in English. It was wild. And I was like, wow,
Dang,
like
that's rad.
hospitality. Serbia, I met some couch surfing guys. We went to their village, like that no Americans had ever been to. So we go out, 4 hours outside of Belgrade, Serbia, to the mountains, to this guy's hometown for essentially like their Thanksgiving equivalent. It's called Slava. And yeah, like dirt floors, wood, burning stoves in the cold, like snow, for like their Thanksgiving family, and like hanging out with the people in that village. No English for sure, like not even remotely close. The old guys like hanging out with the 50, 60, 70, 80 year olds, right? Like me as like a 20, 22 year old, like hanging out. So I would say that a common theme, which once again is like a core to Live a Great Story, is that like people are people, and like you go anywhere in the world, you don't speak the same language, but like you're having conversations, they're welcoming. The hospitality is like insane. They have no money, no resources, no nothing, and they're like giving you everything. Like,
I love this too, just from a communicative standpoint, in the sense of when I was in college, there was a guy on my team that was the only deaf Division I basketball player. And I didn't speak sign language, so I would like spell things out like GOOD, like good job, or things like that. And that was my way of creating like real life hieroglyphics. Because what's the point of communication? To get information from point A to point B. It doesn't have to be right or wrong. It becomes an artistic expression of connection with another human being, or deliverable of information. And you always like see the funny thing of like a foreign exchange student. You don't know what they're saying or what you're saying. It's like, yeah, huh. And you just like smile and nod. But there's also taking it a step further of like looking at energy. Like even though we're remote today, where does Bryce's energy stop and where does Zach's begin? And if we were in person, that frequency would be a little bit more tangible. And when you're in the presence of other people, if you're trying to clean up, you're showing gratitude, you're shaking hands, you're giving eye contact, you're surrendering to the experience, maybe you're picking up on cultural habits and then trying to implement them, they're seeing that you're putting in the effort to try to connect and relate. And that's like the most beautiful expression of EQ, or emotional intelligence. And you're sharpening this EQ sword by traveling throughout Europe, where every 3 to 10 days, you're now tossed in a new culture and asked to swim. And I just think that's such a special experience as far as understanding the human and realizing that, yes, there's many differences, but there's also this one commonality. And I think the fact that you were able to like recognize that is one of the many things that makes Live a Great Story really special.
Yeah, and like to build on that, um, especially on this last trip that I just came back from, I was always really aware of physical touch with people, and particularly guys. Like, even though like I'm straight, they're straight. Like, I would very much touch men, and like no language, like not the same, but I would grab shoulders, grab their hands, push them, laugh, like even and like it was and it was just like my way of like communicating and like showing connection more so. I mean, of course, smiling and I like, there's nonverbals like this way, but like it was and I did it all the time, and it made me feel so good, and like I could tell that like even though there's whatever like barriers there, like laughing and grabbing people and like like, but I was constantly just like always just like showing connection through actual like physical connection, which was definitely like a thing, like was a really cool thing to realize. And like it wasn't a conscious thing really, like eventually it became, I was like, I realized that I was doing it, but it started as like probably a desire for myself to like convey that, communicate that, humanity. And also, yeah, like it started as like a natural thing for me to feel that way, and then to also have them feel that way, right? And so it was one of those things where it's like, yeah, like I mean, talking with this deaf guy, playing sports together, it's like I've played soccer all around the world with kids that don't speak English, and like
Mm-hmm.
it's just like this human, like sports is like one of the coolest ways to communicate, and you can play a whole soccer game, football game, basketball game, whatever, with people, and you don't have to speak the same language, but like y'all are talking, like on the
Oh yeah.
court, it's a real conversation.
No, for sure. Something I was thinking about is just there's verbal, which obviously is difficult with a language barrier. And this is just relating to kind of the coaching space. There's verbal communication or teaching, and then there's obviously demonstration. But then there is that element of like tactile, transformative, like physically putting people into positions, or, the exchange of just like, I got you. Did you just be curiously on the other end of that spectrum, were there ever disagreements or communication barriers that caused challenges in your journey just based on you trying to communicate something that maybe what you said and what was received were not the same? And is that something that, even landed on your radar at that time? Peptides. There's been a lot of buzz about peptides and what they can do for the body, skin, muscles, and health. What exactly are they? And do they live up to the hype? Your body makes peptides. They are strings of amino acids, which are the building blocks of proteins. Peptide therapy involves using prescription-based peptides to help treat and manage a variety of health conditions to maximize performance. Peptides consist of 2 to 50 amino acids and are made naturally in the body to act as important signaling molecules for many physiological and cellular functions. There are over 7,000 known functions of peptides in the body, and adequate levels in the body are imperative for performing at optimal levels. Discover a transformative journey to optimal well-being with Livv Peptides. Livv Peptides offer a natural and effective approach to health support. Embrace the difference. Choose Livv for a path to vitality that prioritizes quality, innovation, and your unique wellness goals. My personal favorite is BPC 157 with thymosin beta for optimizing gut health, tissue regeneration, and healing. Head over to livvnatural.com and use code ALLSMITH for 20% off peptides. That's livvnatural.com with discount code ALLSMITH for 20% off peptides.
Man, my gut like initial response is no. Like really, like I don't feel like not communicating was ever an obstacle. Like
Wow, that's
truly,
cool.
like especially I mean like the long time ago was one thing, but speed bumps, maybe a little bit, like some kind of random thoughts, but like none of it, nothing ever. There was there, no like I can't really think of anything where like communicating with people and not being able to and like caused tension or yeah, like a problem.
Isn't that so interesting? Because I'm sure you've experienced it in your business developments of like you're speaking English, or maybe there's a text or an email or a Slack message, and for whatever reason, somebody's going through something or your tone was seemingly short and you're speaking the same language, but how that got received created a whole wildfire that you were not anticipating. And I mean, that happens so much and so frequently, especially in this day and age where like you have to be very careful of offending and different terms and ideations that can potentially be triggers or unlock certain formalities that, you know, may be overlooked by some people. But it's just interesting that you never crossed paths with any of those challenges. How did the trip kind of come to its conclusion for you, the first trip? And then how did you find your way back to Austin where you spray painted that Live a Great Story?
That trip originally started as a 1 month idea. When I first had the idea to go on this trip, I was like, I'll go to Europe for a month. And then I was like, I can go for 3 months because the Schengen visa for Americans is 3 months. And then I was like, oh, I'm actually Hungarian. I have an EU citizenship. I could stay forever. And then I was like, oh, well, I could go like work and teach English in Southeast Asia or go work in Australia and make money and keep this trip going. So the trip kind of started as like one idea and then evolves. But after about 6 months, I was like, I need to like go back and I need to like take the next step of my journey, which is
Mhm.
really what brought me back home. I was like, all right, I'm kind of done doing this. I need to work. I need to build. I need to create something. I need to earn money. I need to do something else versus what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so around that time, I kind of had this idea. I started another blog at that time. It was essentially like taking my lessons of traveling and how could I apply that to like moving to a new city. So it's like if I go back to the America, how can I take all these lessons about meeting people and building connections and getting to know a place and infusing myself in a culture, things like that. Like how can I move that and apply that to American life in an American city? So I went back to Austin and decided to go back. And there's actually videos from this, which is cool. Like I have YouTube videos that I've like from 2012 and 13 around this business idea, this blog idea, and also just like documenting this story. And so I came back to Austin, Texas, didn't tell anybody. Like I didn't tell my family. I told my homie, he picked me up at the airport, got me a box of pizza, and I just knocked on the door at my mom's house and all my sisters were there and opened the door, you know, turned around with the pizza, made eye contact with my sister. She like took a couple seconds to process it, screams, drops to the floor. Everybody runs over. And that's how I went back to Austin. And yeah, that was kind of like the next step of the journey and ended up moving to San Diego after that. Cause I was like, I want to keep this travel energy going. I can't stay in my home. I can't go back to how I was. I have to keep pushing on my life. I have to keep seeking a new frontier and like challenging myself with something new. And that's when I ended up moving to San Diego.
That's rad, man. What led to the graffiti? What led to kind of just the artistic expression? And was it like a journal prompt? Was it a blog? Like how did the framing of the words become Live a Great Story? Was it something else that was more wordy that you had to trim the fat on? Like how did that phrasing come to be? And then what led to you just being like, screw it, I'm putting this right here, right now?
So the first time I ever wrote Live a Great Story was in my travel notebook that I was journaling and writing and taking photos and doing all sorts of creative stuff on this trip. So I have still have these journals, and somewhere out of that came the Live a Great Story message. I wrote it in a journal, and then the the real reason that happened, and the real reason I spray painted it is because I had a t-shirt company in high school, and I was not when I came, and it's a t-shirt company based around my signature. So I have a really cool signature that's like a Z and an H, and when I came back, I wasn't sure what to do, but I was like really hungry to do something. So I was kind of like building this take over your city idea. And then I wanted to like remake some shirts. So like kind of started up this business again, or at least just made a couple of rounds of shirts. And the stickers or the tags on those shirts say "Live a Great Story." So the first ever reality or bring to life the vision of Live a Great Story was in collaboration with like the very first entrepreneurial project I ever started when I was like 17 in high school. So like revisiting the original t-shirt company with my original logo and signature with Live a Great Story on the tags was the first time it ever happened. So spray painting Live a Great Story was kind of maybe like a little bit of energy from that. Like I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I've always kind of been into street art. This is maybe like the heyday of Banksy and some stuff like that time period. And so what's really cool, and you kind of referenced this earlier, is when I spray painted Live a Great Story, I spray painted two other things the same night. So I spray painted Live a Great Story on a wall. I spray painted this other phrase that said, "If your life was a book, would anybody read it?" Based off of a rap song that I was from fifth grade. And then the other spray paint was, "Do you have campfire stories?" And that idea was based on like, I just want to have as many stories as I can have, all these awesome adventure stories to share with my grandkids around a campfire when I'm 85, 90 years old. And so what's really cool about that is that coming full circle to now releasing the Campfire Club, which is essentially like the container and the community portion of Live a Great Story, because it directly aligns with this idea of like, yo, go collect some stories, like go out there. You don't want to die at the end of your life with nothing to show for it, like go collect some memories, new experiences, new journeys, new adventures. And do you have campfire stories? And now over a decade later to launch the Campfire Club, which is essentially going back to like where Live a Great Story started, is super cool.
Yeah, man. All these things hit the nail on the head for me, especially going back to the camping adventures that I talked to you about briefly. And about a month ago, putting a solo stove at my house and just embarking on some of these fireside chats after sauna and ice, and just being able to grant people the permission to be more vulnerable. It's definitely like a huge motivator and inspiration for ALLSMITH. And so I think it's really cool, the synergy that you've brought to the forefront and that you've been doing it, man. Where I want to dive in next is Two Palms, man. 10 freaking years doing this thing. It started as graffiti art, and then it's just evolved gradually over time. Were you working another job helping fund this? Like, how did the seed stages start for you as far as being an actual business owner? Sounded like you're kind of recreating the t-shirt business from when you were in high school, and that kind of got some momentum. Then you saw the Live a Great Story on the tag. But how'd you kind of fortify this into an actual business? And obviously you had no idea it was going to turn into what it is now.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's been an insane monetization journey for this, because even though I started a t-shirt company in high school, it's not something that was like the original idea was to put like Live a Great Story on a shirt, right? Like this is something that took a long time. There was the shirts that I made, but I always was like, I was working a job I moved to San Diego and was like, I don't have a career, I don't have a degree. I don't have any sort of real work experience. I've been trying to build a business for like since high school, but like they all failed. So it's like blogs, event companies, community stuff, like whatever, all these different projects I tried that were like mini businesses that all just inevitably failed. I moved to San Diego and like didn't have any resources or experience to figure out my next step. And so I was trying to find a marketing job because when I came back from Europe, I was like, hey, let me like do something I know I'm good at. I like marketing. That's been my kind of like, that's why Live a Great Story has grown. That's like my superpower, storytelling and creativity. And so I was trying to find a marketing job. You know, I didn't have any like leads there. So I ended up getting a job as a door guy for a craft cocktail bar in San Diego. And I worked at that job for about 2 years in the beginning stages of Live a Great Story, which was terrible. Like it was like the worst job. It was a great company, but I just had the worst job there. I ended up getting into like being a busser or a barback. And yeah, that's how it funded, you know? And like in the beginning, there was no money. Like I made a couple shirts. I made too many shirts, ran out, like didn't have the money to pay for them, couldn't sell them. Those were the ones that you had. I made too many of them and like didn't have the marketing there. So it was really just a continuous trial and error through the entire first couple of years of Live a Great Story. I had some traction at one point, left the job, traction went away. I left too early. I ended up having to like Airbnb my house on the weekends to pay for my life. So I was able to essentially like sleep in my car in the early stages and make enough money Airbnb my house to like pay for my life and like grow the business. So for like months and months and months and months, I like didn't like I slept in my car all the time because I would make $1,000 or $2,000 or whatever. Profit on that through Airbnb my house to like just kind of skim by and like keep chasing the dream. And really it was like that for a long time. And in some ways it's still like that with growing this and bootstrapping something because like businesses are fucking hard and they're like super expensive. Like it's like really hard to start a business. The startup costs are insane. Cost of living is insane. And to like monetize an idea, is just a really difficult thing to figure out. Like it's not like there's a model for businesses like of course now like a t-shirt company or like an apparel brand that has a model attached to it. You still have to figure out how to like build that within your I guess specify that to your industry, even though there's like a million t-shirt companies now. But like, especially back in the day, like there was not a route and I didn't know what I wanted to do with Live a Great Story. So it wasn't like I was trying to figure out how to like monetize. It was like, what is this spray paint on the wall? And like, people like it. Like, what do I do with this? This is pre, the early stages of Instagram, before digital marketing, before Shopify, before all this stuff. Right. So, yeah, the early stages of the business was like this crazy way of like trying to figure out like, first of all, what is Live a Great Story and how do I make money off of it?
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you sharing that, man, because everybody wants to sexify the entrepreneurial hero's journey. And it's like the way you acquire the skills and the tools to get to that is to stubbornly persist in the midst of adversity. You're either in adversity, just left it, or you're approaching it. And it's your willingness to not succumb to the pain and the discomfort and the whispers from friends and family that are probably just saying, hey, like, stop. Like, this is just a hobby. This is just an idea. Like, it's costing you money. Like, why don't you just quit? Why don't you find something more lucrative that's more secure? And then you've got like that season of life where you're like, no, I'm going pro. I'm going for this. And you're seemingly misunderstood because you don't necessarily align with your old friends, but you're also like so green. You haven't hit a level of success to align with the people that have like proven success within the business realm. So you're in this miscellaneous bridge of loneliness and feeling misunderstood, but very attached to the passionate dream of making the concept Live a Great Story a thing. And then somehow you get to this moment in time where I think people observe and fall in love with people doing the thing that lights their heart on fire. So you acquire this crew of like fans that people are like, man, like I wish I had the courage to go for the thing. And you're doing it. I could back that. And those are the people that start to buy shirts, that start to kind of get aligned with the vision, the mission, attend events, start to share stories, start to be a little bit collaborative. But then there's this next phase, which is this social perception that you made it and that you've got it figured out. And you've got, the website, you've got the branding, you've got people getting tattoos, you've got the stickers, you've got the buttons, the hats, the flags. There's pictures taken all over the world. And seemingly, when you are at the top of the mountain, to the observer's eye, that's when you get the other side of the coin, which is the haters, the people that want to pull you down, the negative emails. Maybe there was a printing error or a shipping error. And it's just interesting, like all of these things I'm experiencing firsthand right now. And as I'm saying them, I'm watching the wheels in your head kind of spin, because you have to go through these things to learn them and understand it. You can't just talk about it in a classroom. You can't read it in a self-help book or go to a seminar. You have to feel it. And you have to develop a healthy relationship with rejection and being told no, knowing that you are just going to try to keep putting one foot in front of the other. And that to me is the real entrepreneurial journey that's not always seen.
Man, I mean, big facts on all of that. You can't secondhand experience everything you just talked about until you actually done it. And very few people have actually done it and done it long enough to like really understand it. And it's really a camaraderie thing where veteran entrepreneurs who have been doing this forever, like they've been at this ride, buckled up, like upside down, full speed, doing all the twirls and the ups and downs, like to like really understand the ins and outs and the mental game and the emotional game of being like a real entrepreneur, right? Because yeah, you see the stuff online and you see the people selling you this dream of entrepreneurship, but like it's not like that. And it's not like that for anybody. Anybody that's trying to say it's like an easy thing and that it doesn't take insane amounts of fortitude and courage and perseverance, it's just straight up lying to anybody that they're trying to preach that to. And then you go through it and you never get out of it. Like that's the thing that I'm realizing, or not realizing now, but like re-acknowledging now, is that all of this journey is like a journey forever. There's always going to be the haters. There's always going to be the failures. There's always going to be the self-doubt or the uncertainty. And it's like, I've committed to doing Live a Great Story for the rest of my life. And so I'm like, man, this feeling that I'm having now at the 10-year anniversary is the same feeling I'm going to be having at the 20-year anniversary and the 30-year anniversary and the 40th anniversary. Like, it's not like you just check out, you're good. Mm-hmm. You're like, oh, cool, I made it. Like that doesn't happen. Right. And that's what's really cool is like, it's like a professional athlete or, a career artist or something like, like that's the level of like, I don't know anybody that's been doing a business for 10, like very few people have been doing the same business for 10 years or multiple businesses for that long. Like people come and go and stuff. And it's like it's like not going to say elite group, but it's a very niche group of people who have been like continuing on this journey. And it's really wild, like reflecting on all of it, like in the recent, the last little bit, like coming up to the 10-year, because I'm like, man, what a ride it's been. And like, it's not going to change.
What's beautiful though, is seeing you smile while self-reflecting on the peaks and the valleys. And I think something that I think is also very important, I think we alluded to this when we chatted a few weeks ago. You and I are of the generation where it's like the beginning of our life was really prior to the technological evolution. So it's like flip phones. I remember I didn't get my first like brick Nokia that I shared with my brother until sometime in middle school. And it was only like, if you had an emergency, we couldn't text because it was like, I don't know, 25 cents a text. The only game on there was Snake. And like, if I wanted to call a girl, it was like I had to talk to their dad and their sister. And then she grabbed the landline and went around the corner and everybody was eavesdropping. And, you know, if you happen to be fortunate to have a fax machine, you had to listen to the dial-up thing and AOL Instant Messenger and all those things. But I think what that does is it teaches you this unique level of patience. And I think that generation that's right on the fence right there also conceptually understands the application and the feeling of delayed gratification. And I can't help but think of like that famous bamboo story where it's like when you plant bamboo, nothing happens for around 5 years. And I'm actually very familiar with this because there was a bamboo plant in my parents' backyard. And my parents always hated the fact that the bamboo would start to sprout. Like we wouldn't see it. And then when it would sprout, it was a pain in the ass to get rid of. You had to dig super deep and then you had to use these like salt crystals to kill the roots. But the point that I'm making there is entrepreneurship is very similar. You may work 5 years and you get no validation. You're making no money. You get no pats on the back. Everybody's discounting and discrediting why you're not available, why you're missing out on certain things because you keep watering this plant that seemingly has no existence. And people like kind of roll their eyes that you're like, oh, you're doing this thing. They sort of believe in you. They don't quite really get it. And then all of a sudden, the bamboo plant grows like 9 feet in 6 months. And all of a sudden, people start knocking on the door. Oh my gosh, I didn't realize this was the thing you were working on. Like, of course I want to buy that. I've supported you all along. Da, da, da. And like you pause for a moment. You're like, man, like maybe you did, maybe you didn't. But it sure didn't feel like it as I was grinding it in the shadows. Hungry, thirsty, frustrated, emotional. That's the other thing that I think is amazing about the entrepreneur's journey is just like you taste all of the emotions of the human experience. But I just very much appreciate the Banksy peek behind the curtain that we discussed last time of like, what is this actually like? And even when that motherfucker grows 9 feet, you're still not there. Like there is no end. At that point, you have to trim it and, you know, sculpt it a little bit to make it applicable in the marketing realm. And then at that point, it's competing with other brands and companies that are kind of playing the same game. And so it does become this gamification for life.
And that's why I'm smiling about all of it is because it's like that is what I've signed up for forever. And it's like, it's not going anywhere. This older friend of mine, he's probably in his late 50s or 60s, early 60s. He has been a pretty long time entrepreneur for however long. And he messaged me the other day and was like, hey man, like congrats on 10 years. Like it's awesome. Like congrats. And I'm like, yeah, man, it's been a crazy ride, you know, something like that. And he's like, yeah. And like, you're just getting started. And I was like, fuck, you're totally right. Like it feels, and my response to that was like, and honestly, to me, feels like I'm at the starting line, like right now, like 10 years in. Like, I'm like, that's, you know, I just got chills thinking about it because I'm like, cool. This is like chapter 1, you know, like volume 1. Like, we're closing this book. Like, that was a crazy 10 years. But like now let's like open this brand new book. And like this next 10 years is going to be like a really cool one because that bamboo that you're talking about, right? Like, okay, now it's actually growing. Now it has the roots. Now it has like, now I've figured it out, you know, like I think you know, you're talking about the Campfire Club and like me, like writing the Campfire Club and like really like the description of Live a Great Story in like 4 sentences. I wrote it the other day for the first time and was like, yo, that's it. Like, that's it. That's never going to change. That's it forever. And because for like, really for like the last 10 years, it's like a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Let's try this, spray paint, community, events. Let's go on a trips. Let's wholesale. Let's ship through a 3PL? Let's fulfill everything here. What if we're adventure? What if we're impact? What if we're all these different things? Like, you can't tell me nothing that I haven't tried, right? And now I'm like, no, Live a Great Story. It equips the modern adventurer on their hero's journey. Like, period. We're going to make badass gear for people that want to go on adventures, and we, you know, support people on their hero's journey, and we come back around the campfire and tell stories around it, and like that's what it's going to be. And when I wrote it and like I read it like on camera the other day for the first time, I was like, it felt so freaking good. But it's still just like the 9-year bamboo shoot where I'm like, cool, like now we nailed it. It took freaking a decade to get it down, but what's the next decade look like?
Yeah, for sure. I love seeing the passion, man. It also just goes to show like the power of refinement. Like, you don't know what you don't know. So you had to travel, you had to try the different flavors of life, play with different combinations of words. Maybe it was too wordy at one point. Maybe it wasn't enough. Maybe the adjectives weren't there. Maybe the analogy wasn't there. Maybe it wasn't relatable. And it takes time to play with this collection of words and to really discover the why, the mission, the ethos, the values that aren't just words thrown on a page and sounding really good on a podcast, but actually have deep meaning and the bamboo roots that can then fortify growth and a strong anchor to then build upon. And I can't help but say now, volume 2 of Live a Great Story, which is getting ready to launch, I believe, July 12th, which I'm excited to announce with you. You're not starting from scratch. You're starting from experience. And you have a whole onslaught of people that recognize what you've done. You have supporters kind of behind the scenes that see that you've developed this confidence. When you look over your shoulder, you're like, I have 10 years worth of this now. It's not like you're just green and kind of throwing shit at a wall and hoping that it sticks. And so I think that's like a really big differentiator as to where you are now versus where you were then. What can people expect now in this 2.0 version? We kind of alluded to it. We kind of talked about the tip of the iceberg, but let's go below the surface a little bit. Free is the way to be. Life beats us up a bit and causes some bumps and bruises, but that doesn't mean we have to stay on the sidelines. This is why we've partnered with Kinneon Labs. Get back to doing what you love with this incredible portable device designed to get you back in the game. Kinneon is on a mission to move people from pain to possible with their top-rated red light therapy and laser solution, which tackles inflammation along with muscle and joint pain quickly and effectively. What I love is that it's portable and rechargeable, making it easy to actually incorporate into my everyday life consistently. It's small and lightweight, so you can throw it in your gym bag or work bag or even an overnighter. Kinneon's lasers and LED combo make this cutting-edge device extremely versatile for use with general aches and pains, as well as chronic back pain, arthritis, post-surgery recovery, endometriosis, and more. This has been an amazing tool keeping my elbows and knees pain-free for pressing, pulling, and squatting in the gym. Great tools like the Move Plus give me the freedom and flexibility to continue living life on my terms without limitations. There are a lot of reasons why over 15,000 people are using this device and rating it 4.7 stars and above. Head on over to kinneon.io and use code ALLSMITH at checkout to begin your pain-free journey.
The main, most exciting and hyper-focused part of Live a Great Story 2.0 is really just badass adventure gear. Like, that's like apparel to go on the adventure with you. Like, Live a Great Story wants to essentially be your adventure buddy, because that's what people use it for anyway. That's what people get the most experience out of. And that's what makes the biggest difference, is when you're out there on your adventures, whatever those adventures are. But we want you adventuring, and we want you collecting new memories, collecting experiences out in the world, like living your great story. And just wearing our gear, because our gear is going to support you on that journey.
That's
So
cool.
it's really like, just really awesome technical materials. It's really performance based. It's high quality. Um, yeah, it's the best. It's the best stuff that you can put on, that you can take out into the world and go collect those memories, and then bring those stories back. And that's the community element with the Campfire Club, is like, you know, go out there. Like, living a great story looks different for everybody. But like, what are those stories that you can come back and share with our community and with other people who are doing the same thing? Because even though for me it's travel, for other people for me it's travel and entrepreneurship. For other people, it's whatever they define as their adventure. And we kind of talked about this at the beginning. Like, life's an adventure, right? Like, not everybody can go book a one-way flight and go travel the world. Like, that's not, and some people don't want to, they're not able to. Um, there's all sorts of sub genres of adventure that people are going through. And it kind of taps back into this hero's journey idea. It's like, that adventure is like the call to adventure. So it's like, whatever that is for you. Sometimes it's willingly, sometimes it's not. Like, there's health crises that people like, oh man, I got a cancer diagnosis. That's an adventure, like, oh, getting divorced. That's an adventure, going to college, getting fired, all sorts of adventures happen. It's how you frame it, it's like the word, it's like, excitement and fear are the same emotion. It's just how you label it, right?
Mm,
It's like,
I like that.
yeah, it's like our body on a physiological level, excitement and fear register the same. So your body doesn't know the difference between excitement and fear. It's like a mental thing of like, okay, and that's the same. It's like, so there's really adventure for everybody in everybody's life, right? In all forms of it. It's answering that adventure and being like, I'm a victim to the adventure, or like this experience, like this call to adventure, whatever that is. You're either like the victim and someone else is writing that for you, or you freaking pick up the pen and you go do that. And so that's what Live a Great Story. When I look back on the last 10 years of this, that's the common theme through all of it, right? Like, even though the people look different, the adventure looks different, the location looks like, there's a lot of differences. Like Live a Great Story is all encompassing. Like, that's why it's really cool. But at the baseline of it, it's some sort of adventure in everybody's life. And we're gonna give you some
It's a
badass
special
creative
mindset,
content
man.
here.
Something we talk about often on here is between stimulus and response is a space. And within that space is our power to choose. But I'd also take that even a step further and say within that space is the adventure. Are you choosing fear or are you choosing excitement? And it can also be both. It doesn't even have to be an either or. And the lessons you learn and who you become is very cool, because that indicates the response, and the response indicates the story. Whether it's good, bad, mediocre, or indifferent, it's a story. And that allows you to then share that, learn from it, refine it, and it equips you for what's to come next in your story and the people you meet and how you're going to orient yourself and interact with the world. I want to jump into a slightly different element of your founding story, and that is it usually takes some sort of disruption or level of pain to get people to change. And I've seen it a little bit on your YouTube channel where you discussed it was the passing of your grandfather, when you kind of officially made the choice, hey, I'm going all in on this project. What was that experience like for you? And what was the meaning of your grandfather and kind of fortifying this path for you?
Hmm. My grandfather, um, I wasn't particularly close to him physically. Like, we lived in another country. He, was doing his own thing. But when he passed, he was an entrepreneur. He was he always went after it. Like, that's like one thing about him. He played college football, and then so he was like Rose Bowl winning football player, like star football player, business person. And throughout his life, for better or for worse, he always like rolled the dice and like embraced the adventure. So he had a very volatile, like success, failure, kept going and kept going. And when he passed away, man, the transfer of energy that happened when he, like, I felt like that spirit of him, like his spirit, like passed on. And it was in a time, I think it was 2016. So it was like about 2 years into Live a Great Story, year and a half into Live a Great Story, where I was like in this time of like, I don't know what Live a Great Story is. I don't know what I'm doing. And I don't know if I can keep going. A lot of the like the doubt and from other people and, the money and all the stuff. It's like, and when he passed away, that like transfer of energy happened where it was really like I don't have a choice to not keep going. Like there was enough social proof with Live a Great Story that like, I was getting messages from people all the time about seeing the street art or like the stickers or, and how it's impacted people. And there was enough like validation that I was like, okay, like there's something here. This is having a positive impact in the world. And I hadn't made a lot of money yet. I hadn't figured out what we're doing. I mean, this was like the early days. This is, for all practical purposes, the very beginning. And yeah, when he passed away, I was just like I was like, I'm gonna keep doing this until I absolutely cannot do this anymore. Like it was like I committed to myself and to him and to the universe that like I was gonna give this like 100% until I literally could not. And yeah, that was like 2016. And man, the other day I was here and I like had this moment like of like pride, like honor.
Because you're doing it. You're not trying to do it. You're not thinking about doing it. You're not faking it. You made the decision to go pro. And the tears and the authentic emotions that you're expressing right now are the thing. It is proof that you are enrolled in the process, that at that moment in time, the transfer of energy from your grandfather, you made the choice, I'm going pro. I'm not kind of doing the thing anymore. I am going all in on this, because there's a little dial inside of your heart. And at some point, the noise just gets too loud to ignore. It starts as a little buzz. It starts as a little beep. And when the noise just gets too loud, you can't help but listen to the song. And what I wanted to share with you today, Zach, was ALLSMITH was born when my father passed away from brain cancer. And I remember going to the cemetery and looking around and thinking, wow, this is the richest place in the world. Songs that were never sang, letters that were never written, ideas that never came to fruition, stories not told, love that was never embarked on. The pain of suffering is way better than the pain of regret, because graveyards all over the world are full of regret. and you made a decision to draw a line in the sand. And for high-performing entrepreneurs, when you step over that line, there's no going back. And I think that was such a special moment where I could hold a little bit of space for you to just pause and recognize. And you deserve that moment, man. And it's going to happen again as you embark on that July 12th day. You're doing it. And those 3 words give me goosebumps, bring tears to my eyes, because I've watched it and I've seen it evolve. And I've seen your merch get better and the quality of product get better. And it's because you are married to the process and divorced from the outcome.
Thank you.
Today was a cool chat, man. I really, really appreciate your time, your energy, and your emotion sharing with me today. I'm excited to get this out to our community and share all things Live a Great Story. I hope these next few weeks are cathartic and special, and you get to really do this volume 2.0 release the way you want to, and have some very cool special conversations, grab some great media, some great content that you can release. If you could share something about your brand or upcoming announcements with the community, what would you like to share for people?
The reason that we're so focused on like giving people adventure gear is because when you put on Live a Great Story, it supports your story. And I think having it around your house, your car, your life, like it has an impact on you and the people around you. And when you wear Live a Great Story stuff out into the world, like whatever you're doing, whatever that adventure is for anybody, like it supports that consciously or unconsciously. And that's why the gear has gotten better and continues to improve. That's why the accessories, the stickers, the flags, the keychains, all these little things like make such a big difference for not only the individual, but the collective. Because I cannot tell you, if you wear this out into the world, like people see it. Like you see people seeing it. And sometimes people talk about it to you. Like I get messages all the time, wore my shirt, someone stopped, we had a conversation. Like it happens every day. But a lot of people don't actually like make that connection, right? But it plants a seed in people's lives that also supports them in their story. It's like a permission thing. We call them reminders, right? So, I think for whatever anybody's going through, whatever their adventure is, like whatever stage of that hero's journey you're on, like Live a Great Story supports that. And so try it out, like that's what I would tell people, like put a shirt on, put a sticker on your phone, whatever that is, and just see what happens, because like really cool shit happens when you wear Live a Great Story. And it's not just for me, it's for everybody. And so, yeah, try it out. And it's just going to keep getting better. This collection's super cool. Releasing shorts for the first time.
Oh, sick.
So shorts are coming. Really cool, like pants are coming. And then the really, really cool stuff is coming in like September. So like that's going to be the real, the next evolution of this, of really amazing adventure gear. And then that just is going to keep building and building and building into like really awesome stuff. So
that's so cool, man. I'll definitely echo what you said. I have a Live a Great Story flag in my garage gym. And one of my goals with my health and fitness is, so my body and my mind are never a limit onto the adventure that I want to embark on. And so on the days that I don't want to do it, or that I'm feeling a little bit undermotivated or not at my best, I definitely glance up at that flag. And it's a great reminder of like, do the hard things now to unlock the freedoms later. And so I appreciate you sharing that message, man. Where can people find you?
Live a Great Story everywhere, everything.com, Instagram, YouTube, everything. And if you go there, then you'll find me too. So like there's a little bit of a separation between Zack and Live a Great Story, not much. But I have a life outside of Live a Great Story. It's very much intertwined. But I really liked meeting people. I mean, this is part of like the biggest reason that this happens, right? Is like Live a Great Story connects people. And so come find Live a Great Story, come find Common Vandal, and like come hang out in the Campfire Club and like be a part of the action.
That's dope, man. As just a reminder for you, you're doing it, and keep going. I appreciate you, man. For those of you listening or observing on YouTube, please rate, review, subscribe. Zach, thanks for joining me on ALLSMITH today. And as always, guys, stay on the hunt for who you've not yet become. Until next time. Appreciate you, buddy.